from the GOP, but Republicans managed to hold key seats in the Midwest. The most contested race is still playing out in Georgia. That's where Stacey Abrams refuses to concede at this hour. She's hoping that absentee ballots will help close the gap and then force a runoff with Brian Kemp. CNN's Phil Mattingly has been crunching all these numbers. He's here with the latest results. What's it looking like now, Phil?
Well, Alice, we've been talking about the divergent maps between the House and the Senate, and Democrats really looked at governor's races as the place where they could put their stamp on this night. And these, you noted, mixed results. But I want to focus on the things Democrats are most hurt about this morning when you talk about the races they watched. And first start with Florida. Andrew Gillum was considered a top-tier candidate. The Democratic Party was behind him, thought of him as the future for the party. He ended up losing. Ron DeSantis, 49.7% to 49%. He conceded. That's obviously, as we talked about, beyond the 0.5% recall trigger. That race is now over. You talked about Stacey Abrams, another really big, lot of momentum behind them in the Democratic Party. Right now, that race is still uncalled because, as Nick laid out earlier, she has not conceded that race. So those are two difficult losses for Democrats. Here's another one. Ohio. If you talk about Ohio, people going into this night thought Richard Cordray, the former director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, had a real opportunity here. Mike DeWine, state attorney general, ended up winning this race by about 4 points. Here's why that's problematic. And you talk about what this means for the future. You're losing places like Florida, like Ohio, in governor's races statewide. That has 2020 implications, but more importantly, that has redistricting implications. When the new census comes out and they draft new congressional maps, those governors have veto power over this. This is why Democrats feel like they have a good night. Let's look at the actual seats that have flipped. And you're looking right now at 7 total if held. And where are those seats, guys? Because I think this is crucial. You're talking about Michigan. You're talking about Wisconsin. Scott Walker, Wisconsin, ended up losing, a longtime Democratic target. You're talking about Nevada as well. Why are those all important? You're talking about a little bit of a Midwest rejection of President Trump. Those are states that he won, and another crucial 2020 state. So mixed results. Democrats happy certainly in the Midwest, but not happy about what happened in Florida, Georgia, and Ohio, guys.
All right, Phil, thank you very much. Back with us, we have David Gregory, Jeff Zeleny, Nina Turner, and Alice Stewart. Okay, so in terms of those governor's races, let's just focus in on Florida for a second because that one was so high profile. So, David Gregory, with Andrew Gillum, is there anything to glean, any wisdom to glean from this? Progressives are not the flavor of the day, or are we looking too specifically?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot that's positive there. I mean, I think Democrats are deeply disappointed because there was a lot of energy, there was a lot of enthusiasm. We can talk about the star power. That's a piece, but he was the real star power. A young, black, progressive, who I think what Democrats are looking for is who will lead us, not just the resistance, but who really will lead us and give us something to vote for. Give us someone to vote for, to create something of a movement. And I think Gillum represented that, and not just because he was young and fresh, because he had something to say that was meaningful, and he was doing it in a state that would be tough. It would be really tough to win. And to John's point earlier, these Sun Belt states are the Democratic future. But I think I think they will become their president at some point. These are such battleground states, but they just, weren't able to do it. So it shows you that demographics matter, but so does the polarization. And the president's strength, the Republican strength in rural parts of that state and other states is still very meaningful, makes it very difficult.
It's interesting. I think if you would ask Democrats going into yesterday what the big governor's races they wanted would be, the top 3 would be Florida, Georgia, and Ohio, and they were 0 for 3 there. But, Jeff, they now control Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. They already had Pennsylvania there. But those 3 states, you will remember, if Hillary Clinton had won, she'd be president today.
No question. So that is going to be something that it was going to be a challenge for this president going forward. If he is going to be, to win a re-election, and we're going to move on to that much sooner than we probably should, but that's the reality here.
Oh, but that happened about 6 hours ago.
Exactly, in the president's mind as well. Yeah. And so that is something that is going to be an issue as we go forward here, particularly, as we said before, with redistricting. Going forward for the next decade, this is the critical year for governors, I think. But I think, back to Florida for 1 second, the president also plays a role here, and I think you have to absolutely give him credit for campaigning for DeSantis. But DeSantis was mini Trump during the primary.
Right.
He moderated during the general election, and he ended up winning at the end of the day here. But I think the White House, how they work with people of all sides, including these Democratic governors, is something I'm keeping an eye on. Again, it's the president's choice here. Is he going to remake himself a bit or keep going on? We don't know.
But you do look at those Democrats winning in Michigan, Wisconsin,
Right.
Pennsylvania, the upper Midwest. This is, where Democrats need to make changes.
But Nina, in the places where it has been a struggle for them, with Beto
Yes.
O'Rourke, with Andrew Gillum, with Stacey Abrams, who's still struggling right now, these were the big high-profile stars. So are there lessons to be learned here?
I mean, they softened the soil. I mean, Alice had brought that up in her first comments, and I do agree with her on that, even though I am not happy with the results. But they softened the soil. I mean, it wasn't a blowout. Andrew Gillum was the future of the Democratic Party, and he still is the future of the Democratic Party. He showed very clearly he ran as a true progressive, not a half-measure progressive.
But why don't
and
you
he
then
came
take the
within-
lesson, then progressives aren't where he lost? So that's
No,
not
well,
correct.
no, but again, it's a difference between having a smooth surface, a rocky surface, hills, and mountains. Let us not forget the import of history in this country, that less than 5 African-American men have been elected as governor in this country, and no African-American woman has ever been elected. That history and that energy and momentum that both Abrams and Gillum had, that means something. Yes, they did not win, but they didn't get blown out either, even with the fact that they had to jump mountains, even with the racialized nature of it brought on by the president and the 2 candidates that they had to run against, making this about race in one of the most negative, despicable ways ever. All of that plays into this. So they have a lot to be proud of. And this is bigger than the Democratic Party. This is really about the future of America, that whether or not we are as a country fully ready to be represented in executive office by people who are black and brown. That's really what's on the line in this country.
Alice Stewart, if we can, I want to pull it back to the House a little bit now and talk about what we're going to see over the next few weeks and few months. Because the Democrats are coming into power here, and they have a choice to make, and the president has a choice to make. Should I hold my breath that they'll both decide miraculously to work together, or where do you think it's going?
You hold your breath and you'll be the boy in blue over there because you'll continue to hold your breath. A lot of it depends on who blinks first. Will the Democrats in the House be about legislation or will they be about investigation?
You can be about both.
It could. Simultaneously, as Paul Ryan says, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I hope they will have a kumbaya moment and actually get things done. We did see when the president met with Chuck and Nancy that they had the summit and they had some type of agreement with regard to DACA and immigration, but it didn't move forward. I think what we need to do is agree, okay, if we're going to get things done, we have to work together. We can't just have meetings and have talk and no action. We have to follow through and have bipartisanship. I'd like to think that's what we're
Do
going
they want it, though? I mean, ultimately, do they want it? Because if you want to continue to resist the president, do you want to investigate? Do you want to use the subpoena power? You heard Nancy Pelosi being cautious about impeachment, which I think is a good idea. I don't know. The president's always going to spoil for a fight. He had an immigration deal. He had money from Democrats to build the wall.
Right.
And he said no because he wanted to take a more hardline position. If you're the Democrats, I'd want this immigration issue off the table. I think a lot of Republicans want it off the table, too. I'm not holding my breath on that. But I always think there's an opportunity because they both have reasons to want this issue off the table before 2020.
The question is, do Democrats want DACA more or does the president want the wall more? So it's whether they come together and decide who wants what.
Who's going to run the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, Jeff?
At this point, you have to give an edge to Nancy Pelosi, the former speaker and potentially current speaker or future speaker. There's no one who holds sway over as much of the House Democrats as she does. She raised money. She's largely responsible for this. She's also responsible for some of the Democrats losing out there. But until there's a center of gravity around someone else, either from the California delegation or the CBC, if she loses support from there, she's in trouble. But as of now, you have to say, I think that she is the most likely next speaker. She's been there before. She knows how this works.
She can count
It's a big
votes.
edge.
I mean, she's really one of the few people left in Washington who can count votes.
Without a doubt.
It's not a rush to a new tomorrow
No.
in either the Senate or the House, but 100 women in the House in the next Congress, which has never happened before.
It depends if there's a center
Very
of gravity
notable.
around anyone.
All right, panel, thank you very much.
So the candidates, they were not the only thing on the ballot. Initiatives on marijuana, redistricting, even voting rights for felons. A CNN reality check next.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Ballot initiatives were made for marijuana, and there were big decisions overnight on that front. John Havlon here with a reality check on all the ballot issues.
That's the only one you care about, isn't it?
I feel like it's the only one you hear about. Every 2 years, marijuana is on the ballot again.
And the wisdom of the people overrides their state legislatures again and again.
I'm not taking a position. I'm just saying it's there.
Well, it's an interesting result we had this year. So, yeah, marijuana legalization, but also felon voting rights, redistricting reform. Those are just some of the ballot initiatives that passed last night in election 2018. And if you look at the whole spectrum of 158 statewide ballots, you get the sense that America's far more interesting and evolving than the old red state, blue state stereotype would suggest. So let's start here. The swing state of Michigan just legalized recreational marijuana, while conservative Utah and Missouri voted to allow medical marijuana. But while those states are singing Peter Tosh's Legalize It, Allie, that was for you. Voters in North Dakota echoed Merle Haggard in Okie for Muskogee. They don't smoke marijuana in Dakota. They just turned down a legalization measure by almost 20 points. Now, if you're concerned about the polarization of American politics, voters in Michigan, Colorado, and Missouri approved nonpartisan independent redistricting commissions, which will effectively end the rigged system of redistricting and lead to more competitive general elections for Congress and more representative results. Now, the fight for voting rights was a big theme this year, and voters in Florida decided to restore voting rights to felons who've served their time going forward. Nevada backed automatic voter registration. Maryland approved same-day voter registration. Now, on the flip side, in the South, Arkansas and North Carolina backed requirements to show voter ID at the polls. Now, we all know polls said health care was issue number one for voters this year, and citizens of Idaho, Nebraska, and Utah are now requiring their conservative states to accept Obamacare's Medicaid expansion. It's a big deal. Massachusetts voters refused to roll back transgender rights after passage of a 2016 bill that was backed by the state's now re-elected Republican governor, Charlie Baker. And Alabama backed a symbolic proposal to allow the 10 Commandments to be posted in public spaces, which will almost certainly face legal challenges, while also asserting the rights of anti-abortion principles and, quote, the rights of unborn children in the state constitution. Now, and crimes victims' rights proposal known as Marsy's Law, controversial because it adds costs and complexity to legal proceedings, passed in 6 states throughout the South and West. So that's your reality check.
All right. I mean, I really like Sublime's song, I Smoke 2 Joints in the Morning.
Really? You want Sublime on that one?
Yeah.
The song.
The song, please.
Just, it's, you know.
Just the song. All right. Thank you very much. What were the biggest surprises last night? And how about those polls? Did they reflect reality? All of that.
From another DVT or PE.
Talk to your doctor about Xarelto.
All right, everyone, if you are just waking up, here are the numbers at the moment. Democrats take control of the House, 222 that they have. Republicans have expanded their hold on the Senate. They are, what, at 51 right now?
Yeah.
Okay. There were some unexpected results that could tell us what's in store for 2020. Let's bring in CNN senior political analyst Ron Brownstein and CNN Politics senior writer and analyst Harry Enten. Before we get to what surprises there were and what's in store for 2020, we have to talk about the polls. Harry, every morning we listened to your forecast. Was your forecast accurate? Has it played out accurately?
It seems to me that it did. Our final forecast had Democrats winning either 227 seats on a median or 229 seats on the average. And right now, I believe that they'll probably pick up about 229 seats in the House of Representatives. And let me tell you, I'm not a soothsayer. I don't go to Miss Cleo. I base my forecast on the polls. And so the polls were pretty good if my forecast was pretty good.
You stuck it. You stuck the landing on the polls completely. There are going to be people who say, oh, my God, the polls are wrong. The polls are wrong. Harry, you told us what was going to happen. It happened.
Maybe you are Miss Cleo.
Maybe I am.
Ron Brownstein, I want to go to you, though, because I want to know why this happened the way it. Explain to me this divergence where Democrats can sweep into the House with, if not a something like a blue wave, and then Republicans can pick up those.
Absolutely. And, people kind of look at it and say, how could these things both happen at the same time? And the answer is that we have two divergent Americas that rendered utterly antithetical verdicts on the first 2 years of the Trump presidency. And the key to it, the key to the divergent result last night is this gap that we've been talking about, the widening gap between the voting preferences of whites with a college education and whites without a college education. In the exit poll yesterday, the national exit poll, Democrats won 53% of college-educated white voters. And that was the key to their victory in suburban districts, literally from coast to coast. I mean, we're talking New Jersey, Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis,
Oklahoma.
Des Moines, Oklahoma, Charleston, Denver, Tucson. But not only those, places like Atlanta, where they apparently want a seat, and not to mention Houston and Dallas. The entire urban, kind of the diverse urban metros moved significantly against the Republicans last night. On the other hand, if you look at the exit poll, the national exit poll, Republicans won 61% again of whites without a college education. They also ran even higher than that among evangelical whites, and they ran very well among rural whites. And so when you look at the Senate map, particularly, those interior states of Missouri, North Dakota, Indiana, that's where those voters are. So you now have, I think, these two Americas that have utterly different verdicts on what Donald Trump means for the country, utterly different verdicts about where they want to see the country going, how they feel about the big demographic, cultural, and economic changes that we're living through. And they are now, I think, more separated and more starkly aligned than ever.
And to give you your due, this is what you predicted as well. You've been telling us every time you come on New Day to look for that in terms of the college education versus non-college white voters. So you got that right as well. So let's talk about what surprised you both. Since you got a lot right, what surprised you last night?
Well, I think the fact was that even though the polls were pretty good, where we saw the errors, they tended to overwhelmingly be in those states that had a lot of white voters without a college degree. So look at states like Missouri, look at states like Indiana, look at states like West Virginia and Montana. Although we got the forecast right in West Virginia and Montana, it ended up being a lot more Republican-leaning than we thought. And then in Missouri and Indiana, it flipped the races the other way.
Well, that's the thing. It's not a shock that the Democrats lost in Missouri and Indiana, but the margins seem to be much bigger.
Well, look, in this modern world, I mean, you're talking about in all of those states, the Republicans ran about 60% among whites without a college degree. That is what Trump has done. The trade Trump is imposing on the party, we see it very clearly. Strong with rural, white, blue-collar, and evangelical whites, but the cost in the suburbs became much more real yesterday than it has been before.
Is there a 2020 implication in that last statement you made?
So it's kind of interesting for 2020. First of all, the three states that made Trump president, the three that he dislodged from the blue wall that I coined in 2009 were Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Democrats yesterday won the governor and a Senate race in each of them. And though they didn't blow off the doors among these working class whites, they got back into the 40s, which is really all they have to do to win them. And on the other hand, I would kind of offer a slightly dissenting view. The Sun Belt path, while not fully realized, and you see the obstacles, was also open. I mean, Democrats got to 48 or 49% at least in Georgia, Texas, and Arizona. They probably, Harry, when was the last time? Last Democrat who got to 48% in any of those states, I'm betting was Janet Napolitano in 2006. And just to underscore the point, Allison, Beto O'Rourke got more votes yesterday than Hillary Clinton did in the 2016 presidential race, which is really a pretty remarkable statement in an off year. So, I mean, they're still uphill, but I don't think you can look at the results in those states and say Republicans can entirely put them in the bank. So clearly the first option is the Rust Belt, where Democrats have shown they kind of crawled off the mat. But I think there's a Sun Belt path that is at least open to discussion with the right nominee.
Always going to be out there. It is
the mirage.
It is the future and always will be.
The mirage.
As Ron Brownstein says.
Harry Enten and Ron Brownstein, thank you both very much.
And you nailed it. Don't sell yourself short.
I try not to, but it's my Jewish way, my Jewish mother. I'm just always trying to please.
All right. Excellent. Thank you guys very much.
Stayed up late to do live shows last night. Here are your late night laughs.
The Democrats have taken control of half of one of the three branches of government. All the GOP has is the other half of Congress, the Supreme Court, and a president who does whatever he wants. So far, tonight's feeling is, yes. All yes.
And no matter what the outcome, whether you're Republican or Democrat, I think we can all agree that the big loser this year is all of our Thanksgiving dinners. Thanksgiving is ruined.
The results just wouldn't come in, right? The whole day. Like for the last few hours, it's just been too close to call, too early to call. It's like we texted America, you up? And then all we could see is that little typing bubble.
Most of us use a highly advanced smartphone to learn about the candidates, to locate our polling places. We use an app to call an Uber, to navigate through traffic and drive us right to the door in the most efficient way possible. And then we fill out a Scantron in an old lady's garage. And they give you a sticker. People do love those stickers. Oh, everyone's very proud of their stickers today.
He's right. People do. People love the stickers.
Well, yes, and he makes a point about how antiquated it is. But the other point is that I don't know that we all trust technology at this point and online things. So that's where we're calling.
They were so freaking proud they stayed up and did live shows. I don't think I've slept since, 2003 at this point. I can't remember the last time I
delirious,
slept.
basically.
There's a little bit of that.
Which is
Democrats take the House. That is a major change in the power structure of Washington. Republicans expanded their majority in the Senate, and you know what? There are still votes being counted as we speak. We will tell you what is happening.
Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, Sunday at 9 on CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is New Day. It is Wednesday, November 7th, 6 o'clock here in Washington. The midterm elections have delivered a split Congress. That's the big headline. Democrats seizing back control of the House by a decisive margin. Votes are still being counted as we speak. Democrats are already vowing to have more robust investigations of President Trump. But Democrats hit a red wall in the Senate. Republicans not only maintained control, but they increased their majority there.
President Trump spoke with the once and possibly future House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to congratulate her after the Democratic win. Pelosi celebrated the retaking of the House by saying Americans have had enough of division, and then she hit Republicans.
Today is more than about Democrats and Republicans. It's about restoring the Constitution's checks and balances to the Trump administration. It's about stopping the GOP and Mitch McConnell's assault on Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, and the health care of 130 million Americans living with pre-existing medical conditions.
The checks and balances thing is serious. This will be the first time that the president has had to deal with congressional oversight since he's been in office. Look at the exit polls here. Several key factors. The biggest, probably women, especially in the suburbs. Women made up 52% of the overall electorate. They went for the Democrats over Republicans by about 20 points. This morning, key Senate races in Florida, Arizona, and Montana still undecided. In Mississippi, it's going into overtime. There's a special election there that will be headed to a runoff. And in Georgia, Stacey Abrams is refusing to concede the governor's race there. She wants every last vote counted. We have it all covered for you. Let's go to CNN's Phil Mattingly, though, at the Magic Wall, because it's not over in some places. Phil, what are you watching?
Yeah, it's not over, and there's actually some really important votes still coming in. Look, let's start with the Senate. As it currently stands, as you noted, it's a little bit of something for everyone, depending on which side of the Capitol you sit on, whether this was a good or bad night. If you're a Republican and you sit in the Senate, this was a very good night for you. Right now, as things currently stand, Republicans lead in 55 seats. They would have a 5-seat total majority. Democrats in 45. However, one of those states that's currently red, Montana, still outstanding vote. And guys, I want to dig in here because it's really important. Matt Rosendale's lead has dropped since we last spoke to about 1,500 votes. And earlier I said John Tester, the Democratic incumbent, has a narrow pathway. I'd like to revise that. He has a clear pathway now, not a guaranteed pathway, but he has a pathway. 94% reporting. So the question is, what's still outstanding in the vote? Look at what's still outstanding. John Tester trailing by 1,500 votes. 5 Democratic counties basically are still outstanding. And John Tester, while there's not a ton of vote in all these counties, he very clearly has an opportunity to pick up 1,100 votes, 1,200 votes in these counties, potentially pushing over the top. We're going to have to keep a very close eye on this right now. The Democrats starting to feel a little bit better about this race. A little bit different down in Arizona, another state we still haven't called yet, still waiting to see what happens. As it currently stands, Martha McSally, this is for the open seat that Senator Jeff Flake, a Republican, decided to retire. Martha McSally, the Republican, currently 14,000 votes ahead over Kyrsten Sinema, a House Democrat who's running, 75% reporting. Basically, this is looking like it's about baked. It's still outstanding. There's still going to be absentees counted as well, guys. Obviously, a very close race right now, but most of the counties have come in. Right now, Maricopa, one of the interesting elements here, Kyrsten Sinema actually won Maricopa County, or is right on the verge of it with 99% reporting, and is still trailing. That's a bad sign for Democrats, but we will have to wait and see on that one as well. Let's go to the other uncalled race at this moment. It's Florida, and you want to explain why this is uncalled. As it currently stands, Rick Scott up by about 34,000 votes. seats, but the most important number here is 0.4%. That's how much the margin is right now. In Florida, the law is an automatic recount is triggered if it's less than 0.5%. That's where it stands right now. There's still absentee ballots coming in, or that had to be postmarked yesterday, that they'll be counting over the course of the next couple of days. That's why it's not called yet, as people wait and see. That's what our decision desk is waiting for. So keep an eye on Florida as well over the next couple of days. Now, again, I said, if you're Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, you're looking at this map and you're very happy. You're looking at Democrats who had a lot of races in Trump country. Well, they lost a lot of those races. They lost in Indiana. They lost in Missouri. They lost in North Dakota. Beto O'Rourke, the challenger to Ted Cruz, had a ton of Democratic enthusiasm and a ton of Democratic money. He made it very close, but he also lost here down in Texas. So Democrats looking at a larger majority for Republicans in the Senate. You want to take a look real quick over at the House where things stand? Basically, guys, Democrats right now, the top line number, 229 seats, 218 is the majority. Still some races outstanding in California. We're keeping a close eye on. The big question now is what kind of margin are Democrats going to have to work with? But if Republicans had a great night in the Senate, Democrats definitely had a great night in the House, guys.
All right, Phil Mattingly over at the Magic Wall. Phil, you're doing a great job over there. John King finally letting someone else touch the wall, and you're doing great. So thanks for being there with us.
He's asleep right now. Boy, is he going to be mad.
Yeah, John can't do anything about it. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it. I want to give you one update on voter turnout. We just got word that so far, 113 million people have voted.
I mean, just incredible. So the predictions of people being engaged and of this being a landmark midterm have come to pass.
Yeah, it was 83 million in 2014, which was actually an historically low turnout. And in 2010, it was 96 million. This blows both those out of the water. I want to bring in our CNN political analysts and commentators, David Gregory, Jackie Kucinich, Bakari Sellers, and Scott Jennings. So Phil just told us what is happening. I think the two other questions are what happened and what will happen now that Democrats have taken over. David, biggest of big pictures. Talk to me about the most significant thing.
Out of the doldrums of 2016, Democrats have struck back. They've taken the House. They've shown surprising strength around the country. Bakari will talk about winning an important seat in South Carolina, Central Oklahoma, winning a seat outside of Dallas. This is not just about, as Bakari said the other day, it's not just about Democrats playing in the coast. They're playing all over the country. The president in an up economy, in a strong economy, still losing a lot of seats in the House. And even in Sunbelt states with impressive candidates that ended up being losing and disappointing losses down in Florida and Georgia in the governor's races, still such signs of strength in those states for progressive candidates. Beto O'Rourke in Texas, another sign of strength. But the president has reason to be energized as well. He creates a lot of this energy, positive and negative, that's coursing throughout the country. His involvement really kept the Senate fortified for Republicans. And he had some pickups in states that will be important for him as he thinks about re-election as well. So this was not a blue wave, but a significant night for Democrats, which I think also some reasons for the president to feel good.
So, Bakari, as a Democrat, how are you feeling? I mean, these high-profile losses of Andrew Gillum, Beto O'Rourke, Stacey Abrams is still fighting there. That hurts, obviously, for you.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts. I mean, those are personalities. Those are friends. I mean, there are a lot of Americans who got to know these individuals. But because of their races, Democrats got results. Because of their races, that energy, it went from coast to coast. And so just because they lost their individual race does not mean that Democrats fared poorly last night. Some of the things that we looked at that happened were congressional pickups in Iowa, in Texas, amendments passed in Florida. Felons' voting rights were restored through Amendment 4 in Florida. If that was signed into law, Andrew Gillum wins this race. So that actually changes the dynamic of Florida moving forward. And I say that the biggest referendum on Donald Trump is a young man named Joe Cunningham, that Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party leadership are going to have to reckon with, and this country are going to have to reckon with. I think he's the future of the party. He won a district that was previously held by, I call him Governor Mark Sanford, but Congressman Mark Sanford. And it was Donald Trump Jr.'s last campaign stop. And so he pulled out a district that was a Trump plus 10, 15 points. And he won it at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And so Democrats have a lot to be proud of. I think the leadership, though, needs to do some introspection because Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, and Steny Hoyer don't necessarily reflect what was victorious for Democrats last night.
I want to talk much more about that in a little bit. First, I want to give your friend to the left there, ironically, Scott Jennings.
First time he's
bite your tongue, John Berman. A chance to agree with you that this was just a big, clear victory for the Democrats.
So here's what I think. Structurally speaking, nothing that happened last night tells me anything other than Donald Trump's favored for re-election in 2020. He remains in good shape in middle America. The coasts are still unhappy with him. On the Senate side, Kavanaugh clearly locked in the Senate. Clearly.
How do you know that? What's your evidence that it locked in the Senate? You mean the Senate was going to go Democratic before
Look at the races. The only race where we still don't know is Montana, and Tester voted against Kavanaugh, and he's been in trouble all night. But everybody else, Indiana, Donnelly went against Kavanaugh, lost. McCaskill, against, lost. Manchin, the only Democrat to vote for, wins.
But Heller supported him.
And so...
And Heller's going home.
Oh, man, he ruined it.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. That
Kavanaugh, would you like to say that Democrats had a good night in the Senate, Bakari?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay. All right, good. So Kavanaugh locked in the Senate. In the same way McConnell going all in on the Supreme Court, I think, delivered the presidency in 2016. So that's what's good for the Republicans. Here's what's bad, the suburbs. Donald Trump's going to have to embrace the boring. You know, I live in the suburbs. You move out there because you want your life to be boring. You know, you go to work, you take your kids to school, you go to your job, you rinse and repeat, you watch your Weather Channel and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. You want your life to be boring. You don't need drama. You want peace, prosperity, and stability.
Is this what I have to look forward to?
Yes. And so, if there's a lesson to be learned, it's that you're fine in middle America, but if you want to recover the suburbs, focus on what you say is boring, the economy, peace and prosperity. That's where I think Trump's got to pivot as he heads to his own re-election.
You just made me feel so bad about myself. Living in the suburbs.
Right. Like, wait a minute, that's not my life.
But I think the other thing that